Hey everybody, it's Ian King, founder of King Sports International and the author of the Get Buff training series. The Get Buff book, published in 1999, is one of four in the sequel at the moment, and is a genuine sequel in that the content flows from one to the other. It's the only genuine sequel in the market in this industry, and the content is building upon each other, not just chopping and changing subjects. In addition to the books, I've published a number of video programs. Here's just an example of a few of them which play a significant role in exercises that for you to understand them a little bit better, they are more visual than verbal, more visual than reading about them, shall we say. So this content made a significant impact when I first released it in the late 90s, and over time many people have copied the works, but unfortunately, shall we say, it's been a little bit lost in the translation. So popular that I even saw a mainstream sort of a pseudo-bodybuilding magazine publish a program in 2011, which was so close to my Get Buff program that I struggled to tell the difference. So it's had an impact, but I think much of the message has been lost. Now, we're going to be doing a one-day program on our upcoming seminar tour, which is titled Get Bigger, Stronger, Leaner, Smarter. And it's going to be a great opportunity for those who make the effort to be there with me. And I'm going to reward you with the quality content. And I believe it will change the way you train. It'll change your impact forever. So let's get stuck in just some of the things that we'll be talking about. So I'm going to talk to you about technique. Now, you could say, well, it's a pretty well-known subject. That's fantastic. But this is the difference. One of the reasons that you're not getting the results you're getting is because you're not targeting the muscles in a suitable way. And that comes down to your technique. Now, technique in strength training is an element that requires some feedback on. If you go blind, if you don't have anybody giving you coaching, no feedback at all, you never get good feedback, you're never going to master the technique. In fact, the best lifters in the world get feedback on a daily basis. Every training session, they're getting feedback. That's how critical feedback on technique is. So I'm very strong on technique, and I'm very strong on you committing to a technical model. So what I teach is a basic technical model, which is generic. It can be modified for you over time. And what I will do, well, I will put you through on the day a series of exercises, so there's no doubt in your mind what I'm talking about. And every one of you will have an idiosyncrasy or a challenge, adapting and not sure how to do it, etc. And I think you're going to get a lot of clarity from the time we spend on technique. Now, technique is very closely connected to load, obviously. Now, there's a number of reasons people use load. First of all, obviously to get stronger, and that's fantastic. But another reason that load is typically used is because we want to impress the person on the bench next to us, or thirdly, we want to give ourselves a warm feeling that we're lifting a lot. So the last two aren't really good enough. And what I can do, though, is I can teach you, take you, say, just to a bar and give you a pretty warm feeling. In fact, you'll probably want to collapse when I'm finished with you. Somewhere between 5 and 20 reps it would take, and I'll destroy you with a bar alone. And when I started teaching that concept in America in the late 90s, it spawned a whole range of wannabes flowing off from that concept, like, you know, your body's a barbell and all this sort of stuff, because even though bodyweight exercise had been around for forever, people didn't understand how to get the training effect with such a light load. So what I'll be doing is I'll give you a little bit of humble pie on the day, and I'll teach you that loading is a little bit overrated, and that many of you probably don't or haven't earned the right to use loading. And not only not earned the right, you're not really getting a benefit. You're getting a warm feeling, but as I say, there's other ways to get warm feelings, and something about doing something in your pants. We'll talk about volume. There's been many factors that influenced and misled people on volume right throughout. There's overseas programs where drug use was high, people were using more volume than the bodybuilding magazines, etc., etc. But we'll stop making excuses. There is a large innate desire for us to do more. And the wisdom it takes to know how much volume is optimal is somewhat like the wisdom of Solomon. And we face that decision every single time we train. So I'm not saying it's an easy decision to make, but I believe from my years of experience that most of us are on the wrong side of this decision and make the same mistake too often. So I'm going to give you some clarity about volume and how to make that decision, because volume in itself could be one of the reasons why you're not getting the progress that you want. Okay, let's talk about speed of movement. Now, nobody talked about speed of movement until I published my 3-digit timing concept. And nobody talked about the pause in lifting until I published my suggestion that we can manipulate the pause, manipulate the speeds of movement, etc. And I included this pause as one of the considerations in my speed timing numbers. Now, it went through the usual 3 stages of truth, where it was rejected and then ridiculed, and then many were saying, well, I knew that all the time. Anyway, but I still question whether it's being appropriately applied. I question whether it's being used. In fact, I saw one of the most blatant plagiarists allegedly go away from it, and I say, well, why would you even listen to that person? They don't have enough of an original idea to be a teacher. So it's not being done justice, and when you get in an environment with me in a practical day like this, I'll teach you how to use it. Now, there's times to exaggerate your speed, and there's times to let it go and not be so anal about it, and that's another area of misinterpretation. There was never any suggestion that you needed to get out a metronome or be knowing how and when to use speed of movement. It is a phenomenal variable to manipulate for variety alone, but there is a specific speed for everybody at any point in time while they're training. There might be some of the variables that dictate that include how experienced you are, your injury risk, your learning level at the exercise that we're dealing with. So there's a lot of different ways we can manipulate speed, and I encourage you to use it in the way that I intended. Okay, let's talk about balance. It became apparent to me in the 1980s that there was a potential muscle imbalance that was coming out of the majority of strength programs. So I developed the concept that I call lines of movement, and I created a simple categorization of exercises, horizontal push-pull, vertical push-pull, quad dominant, hip dominant, etc., etc. Now, again, that concept was swiped and run with without any referencing, and taught in a pretty poor way by people who didn't actually train. And a quick look at their body would tell you that they not only didn't train, but they didn't have any muscle balance themselves. So I don't believe that concept was done justice to. The breakdown went a lot deeper than that. The breakdown went down to, for example, getting abdominals and going through all the lines of movement in abdominals. And that's something I'm looking forward to do during our day, just to understand the depth of this concept, that it's not just a simple let's change one word and go on with it. There's a lot of potential here to not only prevent muscle imbalances, but to ensure that you develop all angles of your body. Sets and reps. I came into an environment in the 1980s professionally where standard sets were being ratified, validated, and that's fantastic. And they definitely have their place. But as you know, if you read my original writings and the Get Buff series and other areas where I said, I questioned standard sets for at least advanced people. I said, when I talk about the anatomy of standard sets, I said, the first set was really just a feeling out, and the second was you probably peaked, and the third one, if you did the same weight at the same reps at the same, etc., the same load, then you probably weren't getting a lot of benefit out of it. So whenever I see 3 sets of something, I question the optimalness of it, unless we're dealing with a really low-end athlete. So there is a lot of opportunities for you to exploit the body, both neurally as well as physically or metabolically, that if and when to know how to use them, because it's one thing to know the 20 different or 30 different or 40 different training methods, but the key is knowing when to use them. And I like to keep it simple. The desire to sell you something that was not available 6 months ago to renew sales is pretty strong in the marketplace, and therefore we probably went too far about 20 concepts ago. But the bottom line is, if you haven't mastered your basic understanding of how to use sets and reps for your benefit, then you probably should stop reading everything you're reading at this point in time. Which brings me to the subject of prioritization, and that's something that was discussed for the full duration of my involvement in the industry, but I took it to another level when I identified the 3 areas of sequencing, loading and volume prioritization. And it's an excellent concept if you want to fulfill your potential. And if you want to look like Superman, if you want to get that superhero look, and you can master this, is going to be go a long way towards that, because we have a human tendency to do our favourite stuff all the time and stay with our comfort zone, etc., etc. So there are so many benefits from understanding how to alternate and reverse sequencing, and when to do that and how long to do it for, that you literally you have the potential to explode physically if you know how to exploit this concept, along with many other things I've talked about. So I trust that that's of some value to you. When we get hands-on on the day, it's always my commitment in seminar to give you an experience that you're never going to forget, and there's no better way than to do it practically. These are things that in an industry where people think they learn by reading or learn by simply watching. Learning by doing is far more effective, and there's no better time to do it than when I'm watching. So look forward to seeing you on the day.